Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Conquer the Clutter podcast for today. Today is going to be a little bit of an experiment and a tiny bit of an adventure. The adventure may not be all positive because it requires technical ability, which I don't excel at. And at a minimum, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to break up. I'm going to ask everybody to please mute because I just can't stop talking in order to mute you. Okay. So, all right. I don't want Braden having to spend half an hour editing out people's not having muted themselves. So we're going to look at 5 different strategies today. And those strategies are in sequence, probably the ones that are most useful if you work them in that sequence. So the first thing that I want to talk to you a little bit about are the stages of intervention. And the stages of intervention are about mentally, usually, and emotionally, how prepared you are for the work you need to do to make change. So I want you to assess yourself and see where you are right now, all right? Because you can wish to move forward to change, but if you are at a contemplation or pre-contemplation stage, you're asking too much of yourself. There's work you need to do to move yourself forward to be able to be at the action stage. Let me show you. So the first stage of intervention or change is called pre-contemplation. Now, can anybody guess what pre-contemplation means? It means that with respect to the change, not your entire life, but the change that you're trying to face down and make, it's not even on the horizon. All right. You're aggravated by it, but you haven't done the work to identify precisely what it is that's presenting a barrier. So how would you be feeling in a pre-contemplation stage? Overwhelmed, frustrated, confused, discouraged. All of these feelings and emotional states have what in common? A lack of specificity. It's a mystery. It is a vague, unidentified barrier. All right. Now, this can be about big issues, or this can be about that fine-tuning small issues as well. Pre-contemplation means you don't have an adequate sense of what is the problem. All right. The second stage is contemplation. Contemplation is when you figured out, not precisely, but you pretty much know what the problem is. All right. The problem is clutter. The problem is buying. The problem is acquiring. The problem is saving. The problem is resolving, if we're talking about clutter, all right? Because not everybody who ends up in a cluttered environment is somebody who acquires a great deal, all right? This can be a slow, steady drip of building up behind you because the day-to-day things of life don't get addressed and dealt with. So today you are still dealing with, trying to come to terms with and manage the things of a week ago. Do you see? Now, these aren't the people who normally end up on the TV shows. All right. Normally, the normal way that hoarding or acquiring or clutter is manifested is somebody who acquires a great deal. They shop, no, that's misinformation. All right. So pre-contemplation, not even on the radar, but you're being aggravated and you have a response to it internally. Contemplation means, there is something wrong, and I strongly suspect it's this. All right. The next phase is preparation. Okay, I've tried to fix that thing that I know or I believe is a fundamental issue, and I'm not having any luck. I'm hoping that after all of the attending at these podcasts, you're starting to ask yourself, well, you're turning off that mechanism that makes it all about you being a failure and whatever the nasty word is that you're applying to yourself, judgmental, undermining your confidence and self-respect. I'm hoping you're starting to ask yourself, what's wrong with the plan? All right. What's wrong? There's something wrong with the plan. And I want you to start at, when you're getting ready for the preparation stage, I want you to start asking yourself things like, do I have the right tools? And do I have the right support to know and be able to use those tools? It's two-pronged. The tools and resources and the help that you need. Usually when somebody is getting started, if there's enough of an issue that they aren't having success, generally they need a little bit of coaching. All right. And that can be, you can have the best tools in the world. I'm working right now on a family estate where the daughter has been left to clean up a level 5+ hoarded environment, and very capable person, lovely. Everybody loved the person who has passed away. However, they had the tools. What they didn't have was they didn't have the support in a practical, acceptable way. Lots of people loved, lots of people were willing to help, but it wasn't the right help to facilitate this person to deal with it. All right. Okay. So now we got preparation. We move from preparation to action. Now, many people stall out at preparation because it can be scary facing something that you've bumped your head on that feels overwhelming or shaming. All right. And remember, there is no one alive, myself included, who, when they have to work on an issue, wants to put their hand up and explain why they weren't able to do it themselves. This is a humbling moment. But as I found on that gorilla trek thing I went on for Conquer the Challenges, is sometimes exactly what you need. Humility to say, I'm going to do this, but apparently I might need a little bit of specific help. Okay. All right. So in action, make sure that you have the tools and the support that helps you to move to implement action. And if you're still stalling out at that stage, one of those or both of those aren't tailor-made for your needs. We'll get to the needs in a minute. All right. After action, You've got resolution. Resolution means not only are you able to work on whatever it is, but now gradually you're able to start to resolve this in the manner of clutter or hoarding. It does not necessarily mean that you're getting rid of things, all right? That you're throwing them out, that's not necessarily always the answer. Now, if there's a tremendous buildup, chances are there are extra things lying around that are multiples and need to be considered. There are a number of ways to resolve the buildup. Better storage is not always the answer. And those we will talk about another day. That's kind of digressing, okay? So those are the stages of intervention. Now, we've just finished the 12 problematic thinking styles. I'm going to try to see if I can put this up in a screen share and basically just do like a 10-minute whistle stop through it so that you can identify, remind yourself. I call these the hiccups. These are the little, when we're thinking, these are the little ways that our thinking goes kind of like, wow. And we don't end up where we want to be necessarily. All right. So give me a second. I'm going to try my level best here to screen share this. I think this is it. Share. Do you folks have that in a big format? What do you know? All right. So as a reminder, it is almost never the event itself that hurts us. It is almost always the meaning we apply to it. All right. We've talked about this before. Now, I have to admit, many years ago, even as a social worker, when I heard this, I thought to myself, so I want you to forgive yourself and understand, you may be having a reasonable response. It isn't accurate, but it's reasonable. It's a reasonable conclusion before you get to accurate. I remember hearing this and thinking, are you out of your ever-loving mind? What a ridiculous thing to say. Of course it's the thing itself. 99% of the time it isn't, people. If you really dig down on it, again, the way we perceive things and the values and fears that we filter, and we all have them. Nobody alive, the best, the most effective and the least effective people, all right, have this. It's a human condition. That's like a filter that we see things through. So let's look at them. Now, don't want to make you dizzy here. We're going to go fast. The first is, I've lost my place. Where am I? Give me a second. All or nothing thinking. It's black or it's white. It's right or it's wrong. There are two ways, that way and my way. All right. There is a definite dichotomy. All right. And this happens when you look at things in absolute terms. It is a success or it's a failure. It's good enough or it's not. It's right or it's wrong. All right. And you're not able to see. You're just not able to see that maybe it's partly right and maybe it's partly wrong. And so when you're looking at assessing, remember, I don't remember the last time I encountered something. And if you look at things honestly, you may find this too, that even if it wasn't working, that it was 100% wrong. All right. And when you do that, that's a really good way to dig that overwhelmed sense in deeper, because what you're basically doing is you're throwing out all of the progress that you may have made up to a certain point, because it's not good enough if it didn't turn out right. It may just be the last 10% that needs tweaking on whatever action plan or strategy you're trying to implement, okay? Black and white thinking is a hallmark of perfectionism. All right, let's go ahead and we're going to find number 2, overgeneralization. Overgeneralization happens when we have maybe a little bit of an experience in something, or I find this when I train people on hoarding behavior and intervention strategies. All right, I find this a lot. Somebody has a narrow but a very extensive experience in working with individuals who hoard. All right, now, apply this however you want to apply. This can be applied to all principles. And they generalize to everybody else who ends up in the same situation from this very narrow experience that they have, either an inadequate sampling or a pretty extensive sampling, but a sampling that is very specific in a very narrow set of parameters. All right. How do you overgeneralize? Now, overgeneralizing often comes from a position of fear. Sometimes it's a little bit of arrogance too. And that's when you've had this experience and it didn't turn out well. All right. And so there are common themes or characteristics in this new circumstance. And because all you can see is the commonality, even though it might be very minor, you discard what experience you have and you prejudge it's not going to work. I had an experience like that one time and I did this and it's not going to work. And so that's not going to work again. Remember, context is everything. You are even a slightly different person. You certainly have the experience of that last event, right? You have more than you came into that situation that didn't work out now, in the here and now, because you have some experience. But the context today is a different day, Scarlett. All right. So don't limit yourself by prejudging that because something didn't work in the past, it's not going to work in the present. All right. Don't look at yourself as incompetent in making it work. Always challenge the plan. And the plan is always made up of 2 things: tools and resources and support. All right. Tools and resources have to fit. Maybe you're using the wrong tools. Support. Maybe you don't have enough support, or maybe you've got the wrong kind of support. All right. Okay. Now, what's the next one? Take you down here a bit. Discounting the positive. Discounting the positive is a little tied to black and white thinking, but if it didn't work, then there is nothing advantageous or positive about your effort. You discount your positives. You're either, again, it's a little like black and white thinking, but it's a fine tuning of black and white thinking. Because when you discount the positive, you generally limit yourself because now all you've got to work with are the negatives. In every situation, good, bad, and indifferent, there are positives and there are negatives. And there's a tool. If you master in discounting the positives. Okay. Send me an email. There's a tool. In fact, you know what I'm going to do? I was in preparation for this. I discovered that the Tools and Resources website that we have set up for the audiobook of Conquer the Clutter, we're actually going to put that on the website as a purchasable or accessible. You can subscribe to it. All right. There is going to be a cost for that, though, because the software that keeps it functioning so that it actually is interactive and tabulatable. You could track your risk. You could track your success. You could track a lot of things on it specific to your reality. That software is quite expensive, so I'm going to have to offset that cost. But within the next month, that website is going to either be a cousin of hoarding.ca, or it's going to be incorporated into hoarding.ca as another tool and resource. All right. Okay. So stop discounting the positive, even in something that doesn't work. On the best day and the worst day of our lives, there are two sides. There are positives, there are joys and pleasures, and there are things we don't look forward to and would rather not repeat. Okay, the next problematic thinking style. How many people do this? Jumping to conclusions. So it's not black and white thinking, and it's not discounting the positives, but this could work both ways, positively and negatively. You can assume a positive that isn't there. You can assume a negative that isn't there, all right, in jumping to conclusions. And what that means is, you just kind of open the door on whatever the situation is, and without, how to phrase that, without really starting to have an intense look at it so you really understand it, right out of the gate, you conclude, this is going to be easy. That tabletop, that's going to take me 5 minutes to clear off. Yeah. And you jump to that conclusion. All right. And when it takes you 2 hours or 2 days to do it, how does it feel? That's why jumping to conclusion is never a good idea. Just when you jump to that conclusion and you preempt reality, it's a really good idea to put yourself on pause and say, you know what? All I know is I'm going to succeed. What I don't know is how long it's going to take and what I'm going to have to do to get there. And I'm going to break it down into even 15-minute chunks. And if that's the only way I'm going to get this done, then that's the way I'm going to get it done. Really try to avoid jumping to conclusions, because you can disallow reality and reality will always claim its place. And that's how we end up discouraged and overwhelmed. All right. So not a good thing to do, to allow ourselves to jump to a conclusion that is preemptively positive or preemptively negative. It'll be the way it is. All right. Magnification or catastrophizing. Magnification means, you've got a little owie. You've got a little owie of some kind that you're dealing with. And you blow it up, this little thing, this little cut, this little sore might be cancer, might be, something. And the danger in magnification and catastrophizing is you use an awful lot of your energy up. All right, that's a really good way to keep yourself on the couch. To automatically assume this thing isn't manageable, because it is what it is. all right? Work, the way around magnification and catastrophizing is work in small chunks. Take a small piece and work at it. And sometimes that's not even in the physical work you do. Sometimes it's in what you allow yourself to imagine. All right. Because when you over imagine this and you make it bigger than it has to be, you're disabling yourself. Your natural response will be fear or feeling incompetent to deal with it. And it isn't a lot better to do the opposite, all right? To minimize it. It is what it is. It will take what it takes, and you will manage it in small, doable chunks, depending on how you feel and the energy you have in the tank that day. Emotional reasoning. Emotional reasoning is when we, it's a form of assumption. So I'm not feeling too good about myself. All right. And I meet somebody or I'm talking to somebody, and now I mind read. I mind read based on their facial expressions, based on their body language. All right. Based on my interpretation of something I believe I see. Don't do it. Always assume goodwill. Maybe it's not, but more often than not, it is. All right. Always assume goodwill. If you want to know what it means, what you're seeing, ask the person. Ask for feedback. All right. And then accept it. All right. Next one, moral reasoning. It's a sin to waste. You know those shoulds and those rules in life. Now, I'm not talking about your personal values, the things that identify your identity. They're who you are. They're the standards you set for yourself, unless they are all of them perfect. All right. Which would be an ongoing, really disappointing experience since none of us are perfect. Good way to undermine yourself. The moral reasoning is when we apply shoulds to practically everything. Should is like a shovel that will dig you in a hole. Should never accomplished anything. All right. So shovel the shoulds and fill that hole back in. All right. Your values, your standards, that's up to you. But shoulding yourself to death, no. Good way to set yourself up for failure. Labeling or mental filtering. This is when we see something, generally something we don't like, we don't approve of, and without even being sure that we understand what we're dealing with or we're seeing, we apply all kinds of attributes and characteristics. You know, we do this culturally. We do this religiously. We do this all kinds of ways. All right. So a thing is a thing. A person is a person. Give them time and they will show you who and what they are. A thing is a thing. All right. It's not like every other thing that looks the same way or speaks the same language, has the same sexual preference. Whatever the identity piece is, there are vast varieties behind those labels. Okay. And you might miss a really rich experience and the opportunity to learn and grow. All right. Diversity. It takes all kinds to make a world. And there's room for everyone who is not deliberately hurting themselves or deliberately hurting someone else. Fortune telling. Fortune telling is just a variety of labeling. All right. So where are we here? Blame. Blame's a good one. All right. Something went wrong. There has to be someone to blame. Who's at fault here? Who's responsible? Even if it's true, responsibility is what you're looking for. What were the components that made this not succeed? And whose part? Who has a part in that? And when anything doesn't succeed, it is always about more than the one identifiable factor, even if that's you. All right? Even if that's you. Don't undermine your own self-respect and self-confidence. Look at the plan. Look at the tools and resources. Start there. And just because something doesn't work doesn't mean that you scapegoat someone or you scapegoat yourself to apply blame. Blame never solved anything. Accountability and responsibility, that's something else. Underestimating oneself. Just without even trying in consistent, small, doable ways, you decide you can't do it. All right. Or even worse, without actively trying and experimenting, you decide you can do it. All right. But you have overestimated whatever that challenge is. All right. And you don't resource yourself. You don't learn as you trip and fall. Wait a minute, maybe I should tie up my shoelaces. Wait a minute, maybe this plan isn't as sound. Wait a minute, maybe this isn't a one-person job. I'm doing 100% of the second person, but this is a two-person job. And the problem with overestimating oneself is you usually end up on your knees. All right. So if you're not having success at whatever it is, revisit the plan. Okay. All right. I think there's one more. Double standard. Double standard can work both ways. Double standard can mean I'm always right and everybody else is always wrong. Or I'm always wrong and everybody else is right. So a double standard is not expecting the same of others as you expect of yourself, or vice versa, not expecting the same of yourself as you do of other people. Okay, now let me get this one down and let me see 10 strategies. All right, let me see if I can bring this one down. Can I bring this one down? If I share that, can you see this one in big screen? It's now look at the really great doable.
Yes.
Yep. Okay,
yes,
great.
You can see it.
Oh, hey, I learned something.
Yeah.
I may not be a technophile, but I'll tell you, with a little humility and a lot of bravery about looking really ridiculous when you can't do it, sometimes we can do this. That's great. So the 10-step method, all right, to stop psyching yourself out. All right, let's just take a run through this. All right, this is aimed at helping you challenge more easily how to find that wow in your thinking, the warp in the vision you have, all right, of yourself or of anything else. Okay, so let's just do a quick run through this. So start today and catch you need to be able to identify the thought distortions that each and every one of us have. I have them automatically as soon as I have to technically do anything. My first line of defense is to say I went into social work for a reason, because I'm not a machine person. All right. Good cover, great line. However, persist, persist, persist. And in small ways, you will have success. Okay. So we're trying to find the warp in our thinking and get ourselves back on track. Stop disabling yourself. Every one of us has got to realize that we can't change something that we don't know about. All right. So the first thing to do is always put ourselves on pause and start to notice our thoughts and track them. Track and see what issues keep cropping up and what issues are the most important to you. Now, when we are tracking the common thread of how our thinking never kind of ends up with success, the next thing we need to do is to identify what's the distortion. So those problematic thinking styles, each one of those is a distortion. And the distortion is the measure and method of why and how what we're thinking isn't true. And if it's not true, it is going to put a warp and a way to fail in your plan. The next thing we need to do once we identify, oh, that's a little bit of black and white thinking. Oh, that's a little bit of thought distortion. All right, we have to acknowledge it. You can't just see it. You have to really accept and acknowledge that, I do that a lot. All right. Here I am again. I didn't like the last time. Because that distortion, all right, is playing tricks on us. And when we think about the distorted part of the thought, when we identify it, we're really now zeroing in on the little specific part of our thought that isn't true. All right. Now, it might not be 100% not true, but it helps us identify how big a warp it is. All right. And the other thing it does is it helps us identify and take responsibility for what part of that thought, if we hold on to it and we continue to do it, we're actually lying to ourselves. We're kind of like a little co-conspirator in not facing the truth. And at a certain point when we do that, and we do it a lot, and we resist looking at the ways that we engage in warped thinking or distorted thinking, we kind of have to shut our eyes to it. If we're not going to deal with it, the human response is to put blinders on. All right. If we fail to look at something that's a little off the mark, all right, we're not headed down a path that's going to end up where we want to go, and it's not going to feel good when we get there. All right. So we have to be courageous. We have to be brave. And we have to fight back against the observable, verifiable, distorted part of that thought that we're having. How do we fight back? There's only one way: with the facts. And when we don't know enough about something and we're kind of stuck at that juncture of, this is black and white thinking, this is whatever, magnification, catastrophizing, blaming, double standard, whatever it is, where can we find better information. What is the source of better information? Well, little things, whatever there is a health question. All right, I always go to the Cincinnati Cincinnati Hospital or the Mayo Clinic. All right, there is always a better source of information. Generally, the better source is a peer-reviewed expert, which means it wasn't just some dude blowing off ideas and who happened to get, a really good social media platform and now looks like an expert. Other people who know just as much as they do have critiqued, fine-tuned, and given a stamp of agreement to whatever. And on hoarding or cluttering or whatever, there's no shortage. There's also no shortage of really bad advice. And generally, that's not peer-reviewed. Now, everything that comes out in research, just want to say there are a lot of researchers. Research is great, but it is not applicable necessarily at an individual level. Research is about population reality, a population level reality. All right, so know the research, but it may or may not apply to you. All right, depends on you. And how do you fight back? You fight back with the truth, just the facts. And one of the ways to do it, I think we covered this 2 podcasts ago. If you have a thought that is getting in your way, write the thought out and look at it. All right. And see if you can identify what part of that thought is just not on the mark. It's one of these 12 problematic thinking styles. All right. And then put brackets around it, strike it out, and ask yourself, what, instead of this wall in my thinking, what is a better, truthful, verifiable alternative? And that's where the better source of information will come from. And now substitute that, all right? Substitute it. And then be guided by it. All right, so we're doing okay here. Now, CBT yourself with bubbles. Okay, this is the biggie. So those were the background. This is the biggie. What are the 3 questions you always ask yourself in any situation, particularly when you're confounded? What do I need in this moment? What do I need? Because this is the moment that I'm taking action. So it doesn't matter in my whole life, big picture in the past, overcoming. Who are you in this moment right now? Because this is the person who's showing up to make the difference. Never mind your childhood. Never mind, I was always in this moment. You may be a brave pioneer breaking out of that pattern. Who are you today in this moment, moving forward? What do I need right now? Where is it? Best source. And how do I get enough of it, of what I need right this minute to mobilize me? All right, enough of it. We're not talking it's going to solve every issue in your life. It's enough of what you need right now. And then with that information, we move on to this screen. So we're going to CBT ourselves. CBT is cognitive behavioral therapy. This is just a shortcut. It's a way, I use it all the time personally. All right. I encourage you to. It's a shortcut for stopping the nonsense, stopping the going back. Don't, like my granddaughter says on the t-shirt she gave me, don't look back, you aren't going that way. Don't look back, you aren't going that way. Why me? This thing that's happening that I need a better response to. Why me? Why is this happening to me now? Why is it happening now? If it's happening now, now can be one of two things. Something different is happening, and the now is different. Or it can be now because I have a pattern, repeat, 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 repeat. And if you're asking yourself these questions, you don't like that repeated pattern. So stop it. Put yourself on pause. Stop bumping your head. All right. Put yourself on pause and ask yourself, why me? Why now? Really, really, really important next question. How is this situation that I'm facing right now that I don't like and I want to change? How is it being maintained? Don't go to how do I fix it? Not yet. How is it being maintained? That whoever thought that question up is a genius, because that is and I can't take credit. This is something I have learned, all right? But I'm going to repeat it to my last day on this earth because it's genius and it really helps people. It is that fulcrum point of continuing or ending. How is this situation being maintained? Next brilliant question, slightly different. What keeps this situation from being resolved? A little hint. Not always, but the vast majority of time, we play a part in the failure to resolve. Sometimes by that, here we go again, right back, full loop, that wow we have in our thinking, or a habit that we have labeling. I'm just not good at that. All right. Well, I'm not good at technical things electronically, and you're looking at this on the screen. So if I can prove it with my limited ability technically, you can do it too. Just keep digging and ask yourself the right questions. And don't settle for any answer that doesn't just feel like it landed right. All right. You know when the right answer lands, you can feel it. Okay, now let's do this. Oh, sorry. There was a second part to this genius part. Okay, here we are. And you see that. All right. Now, these are the CBT bubbles. We're going to finish on this. There is now this is kind of like a replay of the whole schmear we've talked about in this diagram, okay? There's an event, or there's a series of events, but the series of events might be a pattern, all right? Okay, event, not something you want to continue generally. And immediately, involuntarily, all right, despite your best efforts, you're going to have thoughts. You're going to prompt thoughts about it, all right? Now, those thoughts are highly susceptible to the first thing we talked about. And what was that? 12 problematic thinking styles. Most of us have a high risk for dipping our hand in that pool of 12 problematic thinking styles and pulling out something that we have used a lot that feels like an old friend and isn't. All right? Okay. Watch the thoughts. It's really important. Really, I want you to look at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bubbles. If you don't catch yourself at the thought stage, look at all the other pressure. Think of this as the more weight you add to something, the more it's going to collapse on you. All right. So that's why it's so important to catch yourself at your thoughts. If it doesn't feel right, put yourself on pause, take a few minutes and figure it out. Because as soon as you go to physical sensations, now you have let a storm of hormones in your body loose. And they are firing around in your brain, in your cells. That would be like trying to stop a runaway train. You now have the cognitive part of yourself, all right? I believe it's your left brain. And now you've got the physical, and physical boomerangs over to feelings. Now you've got the emotional as well. Do you know how heavily loaded whatever that event and thought is? Do you know how heavily loaded? All right, that is now. That would be like trying to backstroke as a beginner down the length of an Olympic pool and hoping you make the other end. You are overloaded with pressure at this point. And the reason that those arrows go from physical sensation and feelings is because you have just freight trained, all right, yourself to the behavior choice. You have given yourself such a limited range, all right, and you have almost dictated the behavior choice you're going to allow yourself. And that determines the outcome. All right, that determines the outcome. Is that really the way you want to make important decisions about things that are problems or less satisfying than you want in your life? No, you don't want that. At thoughts, put the brakes on. I want you to do whatever you have to do. Picture it. If your representational system of the world is visual, I want you to visualize an image like a car with brakes skidding to stop. All right, at thoughts. If it doesn't feel right, it probably isn't. All right. Over to the bubbles on the side now from thoughts. Okay. So, how did the problem develop? When did the problem develop? Is there a common theme there? Is there something peculiar in this time frame or in you right now? All right. How is it being maintained? How is it being maintained? What is preventing it from being resolved? This is an expansion of those CPT bubbles. Also genius. All right. What prevents it from being resolved? What are I am the active ingredient here. What are my thoughts? Wah, 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 wah. One of the 12. My ideas. From my thoughts come my ideas. Are they also a little off the track? My beliefs. Are my beliefs realistic? Are they based in fact or based in fear or based in assumption? I don't really want to do the work. I'm just going to make assumptions. You're not going to end up anywhere you want to be with assumptions. You know what they say about assumptions? They make a you-know-what of you and me. All right. And what of all of those parts of myself support this being maintained or not being able to be resolved? If you're having a problem with something, you are part of the problem. And generally, this is where you can find the part you are and change it. This is not your identity. This is not your competence and ability to succeed. These are little moving parts that you can line up differently. What reactions do I have to this situation? What reaction? Be honest with yourself. Those reactions are generally made up of, again, my thoughts, my feelings, and my physical reactions, my physical response. By the physical response, the better part of that is your hormones, the hormonal balance that is the fuel that goes to your brain. All right. Okay. I'm going to close this now. Is this any different? These are just different bubbles. Just different bubbles. Okay. So let's have a look. I need to find the, yeah, where are we? All right. Stop sharing. All right. Did that make sense to people? Okay. I would like to be able, what I'll do is I will keep these and I will make sure that they get added to the Tools and Resources website. All right. So that, and if anybody also has thoughts about how you would use the Tools and Resources website, maybe we could give the people who attend the podcast most regularly a code or something to get into it free. Okay, I'm thinking of ways to limit anybody having to, who really is working at this, to have access as free of charge as possible. Okay, any feedback? Let's spend a minute or two with some feedback. How about the, oh, we've got chat, start with the chat box. Oh, it did make sense. I'm so glad it made sense. All right, yes, Cindy, you know what? Those 4 CBT questions. Now, the 4 CBT questions are genius, whoever thought of them. But also look at that bubble off to the left in the bubble picture. It's the side one that isn't connected because it's kind of an expanded version. It's like a floor plan for what's behind those 4 CBT questions. Okay. I hope you do, Jean, have access to the Tools and Resources. Fits with other parameters to work with. Okay, what are we doing here now? Let me see. All right. How many do we have there? Chat. All right. Does anybody have anything that they want to ask me in the chat before we end today? I know it's a lot of information. It is a lot of information. Did I overload you a bit? A little bit. Yeah, okay. So we'll find a way to put it up somewhere and just consider this exposure. Okay. Now you know there is something, and now we're going to find a way for the people who come to the podcast regularly to be able to access it, to kind of work their way through it systematically. All right. Anything else? Yeah, I don't doubt. You know what? I don't doubt that you are. Yeah. Yeah. So the thing about a Facebook group would be somebody would have to manage it. And I think there is somebody here actually runs a Facebook Facebook group online. I know her to see her, but I don't recognize the name. Anyway, all that to say, let me see. You could do the same with a website. You could do the same with a website. What does that mean, Ashley? Send it to me in the chat though. Sophia and Kimberly. Okay.
I'm in. I also know people who have Facebook.
Sophia and Cindy. Was it Cindy?
Kimberly, Brown and Brilliant.
Okay.
Well.
You got a wow there. You're not coming through. I'm gonna mute you, Ashla, because it's there's a wow in it. Nobody's getting it. Okay. Okay, lots of info to nibble on. Let me have a look. Recommend books. Yeah, so every time I do a podcast, and it's on a side topic, I generally get 3 or 4 books from 3 or 4 different other sources, so that I'm not just passing on the same information from my own practice. I want to bring more people into it. So those books are part of the content of the podcasts. And I went through and I noticed, I think we have about, Braden's been doing a great job. I think there are about 13 podcasts that haven't been posted yet. They are the more recent ones, but he's got right from the beginning. I looked at it yesterday, and he is working on getting those posted. The maximum number that Buzzsprout will let him post every month. And I know he's doing that because I'm getting the bill. We will see you next week. If there are any topics that moving forward you want to know about, more about, then please send them in the chat before I close this off, and we will start making a plan. And know that the groups are going to start in September, and one of them is definitely going to be an intensive adverse childhood experiences workshop. All right. So have a great rest of your day, and I will see you next week. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Elaine.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Elaine. Thanks, Tribe.
Take care.